Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I am Aneeb Hamid with the news of this hour. Let's begin with the top stories first. The United States has reportedly carried out a military strike in Kabul. The U.S. officials say the drone targeted a vehicle with multiple suicide bombers on way to the Kabul airport. In what appeared to be a separate incident, a rocket struck a house near the airport, killing at least one child. The Pakistan Army says 2 soldiers have been martyred in exchange of fire with terrorists from across the Afghan border. The military's media wing said Pakistani troops killed at least 2 terrorists in the retaliatory fire. It condemned the continuous use of Afghan soil for terrorist activities against Pakistan. The Yemeni government says the Houthi rebels have killed at least 30 soldiers in an attack on a military base in Laj province. The officials say 60 others got injured when the rebels hit Al-Anad air base with missiles and drones. The Houthi rebels have not yet commented on the attack. Pakistan has expanded COVID-19 restrictions to 27 cities in the provinces of Punjab and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa amid rising infections. The country has registered 69 deaths and more than 3,900 infections overnight. Meanwhile, Mexico has reported 756 daily deaths and more than 17,000 new cases. Globally, the death toll is over 4.4 million, while the caseload is approaching 216 million. Tens of thousands of people are fleeing the U.S. state of Louisiana as Hurricane Ida closes in from the Gulf of Mexico. Ida is now a Category 4 hurricane with up to 225 kilometers per hour sustained winds. It is expected to make landfall on Sunday evening. News in detail after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now let's have the news in detail. We start from Afghanistan, where the United States has carried out a drone strike on ISIS militants in Kabul. U.S. officials say the drone targeted multiple suicide bombers in a vehicle who were aiming to carry out an attack on the Kabul airport. It comes after a rocket struck a house near the airport, killing at least one child. It is not clear if the 2 incidents are connected. Earlier, U.S. President Joe Biden promised strikes against ISIS in retaliation for Thursday's deadly bombing on the airport. 170 people, including 13 U.S. Marines, were killed in the attack. This comes as the U.S. went down a historic airlift that saw tens of thousands evacuated from Kabul. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says there are still about 300 U.S. citizens awaiting departure. Meanwhile, all British troops have left Kabul, ending the UK's 20-year military involvement in Afghanistan. Meanwhile, the resistance forces have rejected Taliban's claim that they have entered the Panjshir Valley. Head of the resistance front, Mohammad al-Mazahid, said there is no fight in the valley and no one has entered the province. It comes after the Taliban claimed their forces had entered Panjshir from several directions without facing any resistance. Russian envoy to Kabul, Dmitry Zernov, said the Taliban can take over Panjshir within hours, but said they do not want to proceed to avoid bloodshed. Zernov said that ISIS attack at the Kabul airport has challenged the Taliban, not the United States. Now for more on this, we have Sumaira Khan with us, our correspondent in Kabul. Now Sumaira, tell us, the US President Joe Biden has warned of another terrorist attack on the Kabul airport. What preventive measures have the US forces and the Taliban taken in and around the airport to avoid the attack?
Unfortunately, the U.S. administration is issuing although they are issuing all the threat alerts and they are trying to keep people away from the airport, but unfortunately, people, the number of people who are trying to get into the airport is still rising, and this is the main concern right now for both parties, Taliban and the U.S. administration, and the leftover of U.S. troops over there. That we are expecting that they are leaving the Hamid Karzai International Airport tonight, because for tonight we have this information that all the troops want to leave by tonight. So and it's the 29th August right now. So there are obviously certain issues that Taliban security forces, they have deployed already the specialized force of Al-Fateh and Badri 313 in the entire outskirts of airport. But still the concern is that people are not ready to listen to the threat alerts, and they keep coming to the airport, and majority of them, they are even staying there for night. They are not listening to the instructions issued by the Taliban and security forces over there, and that was the reason one of the Talib scout spoke to me. He said, now if we are going to if we deal with them with the strict measures, and there will be another wave of propaganda by the Western media and media of Afghanistan against us that we are not treating people well. So this is unfortunate scene right now that people are not ready to listen and leave.
All right, now, Sumera, also tell us, President Biden has vowed to hunt down the perpetrators of the Kabul airport attack and said the strike was not the last. So do the Taliban support such strikes in Afghanistan, even against the ISIS?
I think right now I'm just trying to get into contact with the spokesperson Zabihullah Mujahid as soon as possible, and we received a message from him as well and his team as well that they are going to issue a statement on this, because it is a dire situation where US is issuing statement one after another that this is not the last airstrike, over the horizon airstrike on the alleged Daesh hideouts in the different provinces of Afghanistan. But yet we are waiting for the confirmation from the Talib corridors over this, that either they acknowledge all these airstrikes, they are supporting them, or they have some other things, they have some other policy statement on this. But as of now, the Talib quarters are right now, they are keeping complete mum on the situation, and this tells us it can be a clear message that it might be in collaboration or after the approval of Taliban. But as of now, based on my personal opinion, I cannot commit one thing so strongly that yes, Taliban are in coordination with the US troops to conduct these over-the-horizon airstrikes on Daesh hideouts in Afghanistan.
Right, all right, Sumera. Now, the officials said US forces are in the final phase of leaving Kabul, and just over 1,000 civilians at the airport remain to be flown out before the troops withdraw. Sumera, will the US be able to complete its evacuation operation today?
I think those who are right now present within the compound of airport, they are the responsibility of US troops, and the troops have also, being in coordination with the Talib scouts, we got this information early in the morning that if they are trying hard to transport these 1,000 people to Doha, Qatar, to the Al Udeid military air base or the other base of, and they can seek cooperation from any other base, including Tajikistan and Pakistan as well. But if they are unable to do so, they are unfortunately going to leave those civilians within the compound of the Kabul International Airport, because they are right now trying to gather all their stuff. They have to manage many things prior their evacuation from the said airport. And the other thing which is very important for the US troops right now, they have their camp office of US Embassy as well on the airport. So these things are right now kind of hodgepodge for them. And first of all, their topmost priority is not evacuating those civilians, those 1,000 civilians waiting for the flights over there, but their topmost priority is to secure all the offices, either to destroy the sensitive and classified documents piles, and also they are also trying to assess the risk factor once they leave this place, they are not going to be able to visit the premises again. So they are right now handling all their classified and sensitive stuff. This is why there are controlled blasts. They are burning up the stuffs and things like that are going on. But evacuating the remaining civilians in airport is obviously not their priority.
Right, Samara, lastly, tell us the resistance forces have rejected Taliban's claims that they have entered the Panjshir Valley. What is the latest situation there?
The latest in the Panjshir Valley is it's very simple right now. Taliban are not entering the valley. They are just trying to occupy the valley from outskirts. They have besieged the valley, and I've got this confirmation from residents of the valley as well, that residents are right now, they are getting they literally are fed up with this besiege, and they are feeling them, they are taking themselves as hostage by Taliban. But it's a war tactic. They want the valley to surrender without any bloodshed. Maulana Turabi from the 6-member delegation from Taliban, he is there at Jabal Siraj, and the 12-member delegation led by Basir Salangai from the Panjshiris, they are still in contact. They are trying to resume the last phase of dialogue. According to the information from the sources, well-placed sources, they are trying to work out a truce. But there are some unseen issues on the division of governorships of the provinces, important in key provinces and key ministries in the federation. So by tonight or by tomorrow, there will be a result from the last round of the negotiations probably.
Right, thank you, Samara, for the latest updates from Afghanistan. Now, moving on, the Pakistan Army says 2 soldiers have been martyred in an exchange of fire with terrorists from across the Afghan border. The military's media wing said the terrorists opened fire at a military post in Bajaur district. It said the army troops responded befittingly, killing at least 2 terrorists. The ISPR condemned the continuous use of Afghan soil for terrorist activities against Pakistan. It said Islamabad expects that a new leadership in Afghanistan will not allow such activities against Pakistan. Now, Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi says peace and stability in Afghanistan will benefit the entire region. In a statement, Qureshi cautioned that abandoning Afghanistan will affect all its neighbours negatively.
He said India has pulled together different terrorist groups to carry out malign activities in Pakistan. Qureshi warned that India is trying to destabilize the regional peace and stressed upon keeping a strict vigil over such designs. While National Security Advisor Moeed Yusuf urged the international community to stay engaged with the Afghan leadership. The advisor said a security vacuum in Kabul will lead to spreading of terrorism in the region. Yusuf called for an internationally coordinated effort for durable stability backed with an economic plan. Since the Taliban took over Kabul, hundreds of Afghans have crossed the border into Pakistan amid the economic crisis. Prices of food and other necessities in Afghanistan has been rising while the banks are closed.
Now, in Canada, hundreds of people have marched through Toronto to protest the Taliban's takeover of Afghanistan. The protesters demanded that the Canadian government to help rescue Afghans still stranded in Kabul. Over in Greece, hundreds of Afghans marched to the U.S. Embassy. They appealed to the international community for peace and not to abandon Afghanistan. Protesters also gathered in Paris and called on the international community not to give up on trying to help the Afghan population. Meanwhile, in Germany, Afghan evacuees are quarantining in a U.S. military's airbase before they can move to another country. Now, the Yemeni government says Houthis have killed at least 30 soldiers in an attack on a military base in Laj province. They targeted the Al-Anad air base, belongs to the forces of the Saudi-led coalition. The officials say over 60 others got injured after the rebels hit the base with missiles and drones. A Southern Forces spokesperson said the death toll may rise as rescuers are still clearing the scene. Several loud blasts were reportedly heard in the area. The rebels have not yet commented on the attack. The Yemeni government and Houthis have been locked in war since 2014 when the rebels seized the capital, Sana'a. Now, at least 6 Palestinians have been injured after Israel bombed the Gaza Strip, violating the truce yet again. The Israeli military claimed that the airstrikes targeted the Hamas positions in the Strip. The military alleged that the strikes were in response to incendiary balloons launched from the Palestinian enclave. The attack comes after Palestinian groups announced to resume protests at the Israel-Gaza border against Tel Aviv's restrictions on the enclave. An Egyptian-mediated truce ended the May conflict, in which Israel carried out airstrikes across the coastal enclave. At least 250 Palestinians and 13 people in Israel were killed in 11 days of fighting. Now, the UN says 55 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli forces in the West Bank this year by live ammunition. In a report, the UN Humanitarian Office said that Israeli forces also injured 221 Palestinians. It added that over 500 Palestinian-owned structures have been demolished, forcing more than 700 people to immigrate. Earlier, at least 6 Palestinians were injured after Israel bombed the Gaza Strip, violating the truce yet again. The attack comes after Palestinian groups announced to resume protests at the Israel-Gaza border against Tel Aviv's restrictions on the enclave. Now, Iran's supreme leader says the current U.S. government is no different from the previous one over its behavior on the nuclear deal. Ali Hosseini Khamenei made the remarks during a meeting with President Ibrahim Raisi's newly formed cabinet. Khamenei said Washington truly has no shame on the nuclear issue. He said the U.S. withdrew from the JCPOA, but it makes demands as if it was Iran that pulled out. The supreme leader went on to say U.S. foreign policy is like a predator wolf that sometimes changes to a cunning fox. This comes hours after a top Iranian security official accused U.S. President Joe Biden of illegally threatening Tehran. Earlier, in a meeting with Israeli Prime Minister, Biden said the U.S. may consider other options if nuclear diplomacy with Tehran fails. Now, moving on to Ethiopia, where rebel forces from the war-torn region of Tigray have accused the African Union of bias as mediation efforts grow. This comes days after the bloc appointed former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo as a mediator in the months-long conflict. But a spokesman for the Tigray People's Liberation Front dismissed the initiative, saying the bloc holds partially towards the Ethiopian government. Northern Ethiopia has been racked by violence since November, when Premier Abiy Ahmed sent troops into Tigray to topple the TPLF. The 2019 Nobel Peace Prize winner promised a swift victory, but the war has instead dragged on for months. More news coming up after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now, Mexico has registered 756 daily deaths from COVID-19 and more than 17,000 new cases. Globally, the death toll is over 4.4 million, while the caseload is approaching 216 million. More details about the pandemic in this report.
The coronavirus-related restrictions and vaccinations have proven so far the key to getting back to normalcy. Italy says it will eliminate, on August 31st, a 5-day mandatory quarantine for travelers from the UK. In France, the number of people in intensive care units dipped for the first time in 9 days. Over in Germany, thousands marched in Berlin to protest against restrictions even after demonstrations were banned. Police said protesters had gathered for unauthorized marches in different parts of the city center.
There were some attacks on local forces coming out of these demonstrations, throwing bottles or physical assaults. At the moment, we can report some 80 detentions. Unfortunately, we must also report 4 injured police, so we cannot talk about a totally peaceful demonstration.
New Zealand has reported 83 locally acquired cases of the highly infectious Delta variant. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern says some changes on how the outbreak is managed could be announced on Monday. In Australia, New South Wales saw a record 1,218 overnight infections. The vast majority was in Sydney, the epicenter of the Delta-fueled outbreak, with an additional 6 deaths. Authorities urged citizens to get vaccinated, fearing the worst is still to come.
For example, given the case numbers are where they are, I suspect in October we'll probably have the highest number that we do in intensive care. I suspect we've not reached the peak yet there at all. But how hard we work now will make sure we keep people out of hospital, and that's really important.
Thailand says it expects to have 140 million doses of vaccines this year as it ramps up inoculation to fight its biggest wave of infections. The United Arab Emirates says it will resume issuing tourist visas to vaccinated travellers from 30th of August.
Now, Pakistan has expanded COVID-19 restrictions to 27 cities in the provinces of Punjab and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, citing the pressure on healthcare system. In early August, the health authorities had revised its SOPs for 13 cities, which were to remain in effect till the end of this month. They said the decision was taken in view of the growing number of COVID-19 positive cases. As per the rules, all commercial activities will be closed by 8 p.m. except essential services. Indoor dining and weddings will be banned, and shrines and cinema halls will remain closed. Meanwhile, offices, public transport and educational institutions will operate at 50% capacity. The country's death toll has exceeded 25,669 new fatalities overnight. Now, a priest and 3 other men have been charged with the gang rape and murder of a 9-year-old Dalit. The girl was allegedly assaulted earlier this month after she went into a crematorium to ask for water. The girl's mother earlier told police the men called her to the crematorium and said her daughter had been electrocuted. Her daughter's body was then cremated before some locals intervened and pulled the charred remains from the pyre. India is considered one of the most dangerous places in the world to be a woman. According to Home Ministry data, a woman is raped every 15 minutes in the country. Well, now in Bangladesh, over 100,000 people have been affected by floods in at least 12 districts. In a statement, the Disaster Management Ministry said the floods were caused by a surge in upstream water and seasonal monsoon rains. It added torrential rains have also submerged a huge cropland of over 100 villages in the affected areas. The report warned the residents of a worsening situation in the northern and central districts. Tens of thousands of people are fleeing the U.S. state of Louisiana as Hurricane Ida closes in from the Gulf of Mexico. Ida is now a Category 4 hurricane with up to 225 kilometers per hour sustained winds. It is expected to make landfall on Sunday evening. Authorities warned the storm could be one of the biggest to hit the state in 150 years. The governor of neighboring Mississippi has also declared a state of emergency. Also in the U.S., the massive CALDOR fire continues raging in California amid efforts to avoid it from reaching the Lake Tahoe region. Authorities say the western and eastern edges remain the most active. Officials say the blaze has burned more than 152,000 acres so far and is 19% contained. It churned through mountains just southwest of the Tahoe Basin, cloaking much of the area in toxic smoke. The firefighters hope to take advantage of the calmer winds before the hot, heavy gusts returned. The southwest winds are expected to move across the fire on Sunday night through Tuesday. Paris's Arc de Triomphe monuments will be enveloped in a shimmering wrapper in a posthumous installation by artist Christo. The envelopment of the world-recognized Arc de Triomphe monument is a tribute to the late artist couple Christo and Jean-Claude, who dreamed for decades of the project.
Christo said, I would only like to wrap the Arc de Triomphe in Paris. That's the one thing I really would like to do. And then what happened was they said, okay, and they talked to Philippe Bellaval, who is the president of the Center of Monument National, who loved the idea, and he brought it to President Macron, and that's how the whole thing happened and started in 2017.
Workers have erected scaffolding around 19th century arc to set it up for the silvery blue recyclable plastic wrapping. The monument will be on view between September 18 and October 3rd this year.
Now we have another month to go before the opening. So most of the steel, as you can see, to steel to protect is installed. The cable system is installed. The votes are installed. The weights at the bottom are installed. And right now we are placing the protection for the little corniche where the cherry picker is there now.
Christopher Javashev was known for his larger-than-life installations. Christo wrapped up a stretch of coastline in Australia and the Reichstag Parliament building in Berlin. He also worked closely with Jean-Claude and covered Paris's Pont Neuf Bridge in yellow cloth in 1975. Now, Switzerland has started the construction of its largest alpine solar plant to help secure renewable energy throughout the year. The 2.2 megawatt project is a part of Swiss plans to plug the gap left by the phase-out of nuclear energy. Details in this report. Strategies to limit the impacts of climate change have become divisive in Switzerland. Under the government's Energy Strategy 2050, Switzerland plans to increase energy production from renewables and hydro generation, aiming to add 2 terawatts by 2040. The project manager says the transition is going on to a certain extent, but will eventually gain momentum.
This is the idea to have installations in other places as well, like here on a dam, on a hydropower dam, but it could be made on infrastructure in general.
The Alpine location will let the Mutsee plant deliver half its production during the winters, when sunlight is generally in short supply in Switzerland. Solar plants at lower elevations produce only around a quarter of their electricity during this half of the year. Switzerland imports electricity especially from European Union in the colder months. But snags in relations with the European Union mean Switzerland must urgently up its winter energy production.
Need is bigger in winter than in summer, and it will be even more so in the future. So therefore we're looking for a high alpine installation for a balanced yield, that is not only in summer but also in winter.
Nuclear power last year generated a third of the country's electricity, while fossil fuels still accounted for more than 60% of Switzerland's overall energy consumption. When it is completed, foreseeably by year-end, the Mutsee will have nearly 5,000 solar modules, producing around 3.3 million kilowatt-hours of electricity per year. Now, NASA has launched SpaceX's 23rd commercial resupply service mission to its International Space Station. The two-stage Falcon 9 rocket blasted off from the agency's Kennedy Space Center in the state of Florida. The Dragon cargo capsule is packed with over 2,200 kilograms of supplies, scientific equipment and hardware. This also includes a new robotic arm that will be tested inside the space station's Bishop airlock. The rocket's reusable first stage returned to Earth a little less than 8 minutes after the liftoff. In a smooth touchdown, it landed on one of SpaceX's drone ships in the Atlantic Ocean. The launch was postponed from its original liftoff time a day before because of bad weather. Now in Peru, the global health crisis could not stop 200 couples from tying the knot in a mass wedding in the capital city of Lima. The wedding ceremony kicked off first by health screenings of the couples. Interestingly, the ceremony included the oldest couple of 82-year-old groom and 87-year-old bride. Meanwhile, 24-year-old Marco and 19-year-old Judith were the youngest couple. The ceremonies were aired via the Facebook page of Lima's municipality for relatives who were unable to attend the event. More news coming up after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now in North Korea, young citizens gathered to dance in the capital, Pyongyang, to celebrate the Youth Day. They were welcomed by the locals at the city's railway station. Later, thousands of people watched the dance party at Kim Tu-sung Square. A fireworks display was also arranged at the evening gala. The Youth Day is celebrated in the country every year on 28th of August since 1991. And that is all for now. For the latest information, you can always follow us on social media at indus.news.